All right, well, hello everyone. Thank you all so much for tuning in. My name is Jelly Morell, and I will be your host for today's webinar. We're fortunate to have Tech 30 engineer Eduardo Sordo here with us today to discuss the latest updates in PTC Mathcad Prime 5.0. Also with us today is Andy Dio, VP of Marketing for Tech 30. I will now hand the reins over to Andy, who will give you a little background overview on Tech 30.
Good morning or afternoon, depends on where you are. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Andy Dio. Just want to take a couple seconds to kind of introduce you to Tech 30 for those of you who do not haven't been on one of these webcasts before. So Tech 30 is a PTC Platinum partner. We're based in Southern California and Colorado, but we do have coverage across the United States. So we provide full PTC PLM products and software, including Creo, Windchill, and obviously Mathcad. But we also provide additive manufacturing hardware and technologies, as well as engineering services to help all of our customers achieve engineering excellence. So today we have Eduardo, who's going to be presenting what's new in Mathcad 5.0. As you all know, the product was just released recently. But in order to help us kind of gear our content a little bit, I want to launch a quick poll before I pass it over to Eduardo. So if you want to take a couple seconds to just go ahead and answer the poll, that'd be fantastic. All right, we're going to give it a few more seconds here. Thank you very much for your response. So based on the responses, roughly 90% of you are currently using Mathcad, but an older version, and about 10% of you have already upgraded to the latest version. So Eduardo, that's your audience. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and pass the presentation over to Eduardo.
Okay, thank you, Andy, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So, as you may know, condensing and organizing your engineering data is, a challenge nowadays, right? You have to manage your CAD files, your Excel files, your calculations, and sometimes even emails that go back and forth, right? So, Mathcad Prime is here to consolidate your design intent, to have one really source of truth to pass on to the rest of your design process. So what is Mathcad? As you may know, it's an engineering notebook. It's not necessarily a calculation sheet, which means that you're able to do more than just calculations. You can embed text, embed images, integrate it with your Excel files, your CAD files. So it really does provide you with an overall comprehensive notebook where you can manage your design intent. All right, let's touch on some of the key features in Mathcad Prime. And some of its differentiators with its competitors is the fact that it has a simple standard mathematical notation, right? So you don't need to necessarily have training with Mathcad to read the file itself. There's no syntax or learning curve involved. It's straight from the box. It has comprehensive support for units. So as you can see on the right, the units here are highlighted in blue. In the old versions of Mathcad, this wasn't the case, and now this just emphasizes the importance of units and managing that, and taking that into account within your calculations. This is a document-oriented approach, which means that Mathcad Prime works like a word processor in the background, so you can go ahead and make notes to your calculations, similar to commenting within your code. And lastly, this is a new feature, which is the 2D visualization of plots. So this is something I'm going to demonstrate later on, but you can enhance the features and the presentation of your 2D plots and make it a little bit more appealing depending on who your audience is. Okay, so for today's agenda, I'm going to go ahead and retouch on some of the improvements within the overall application. So this involves formatting, document control. We'll take a look at some of important features like the differences between numeric calculations versus symbolic calculations. We'll touch on some Excel integration capabilities as well as some plotting capabilities, and then we'll see the main meat of the upgrade to Prime 5.0, and that's going to be the 2D plots. So first, I'll touch on some important features that most of the time I see are skipped and not really utilized, and then we'll get more into the plotting enhancements. So here I have a document that is already made, and as you can see, it is pretty organized. It has a format in which you can easily understand what the variables are and what these definitions are, and you can go ahead and do your calculations right from the same sheet. Right, it's easy to read, easy to manage your units. And one thing I want to show you is that if there's any errors within the units, your Mathcad Prime worksheet will go ahead and let you know. So for this short example, I'll manipulate the units within the length of the shaft here, which is represented in meters. And I'll keep this units right here the same. So if we change the units in your L variable, you should get an error within this formula here, right? So if we subtract this, right, this responds to that change. So it's saying that you cannot subtract something that has no units with centimeters, right? And this gives you an error, which makes it really easy to audit your worksheets. If you had Excel, it'd be difficult to manage all these units. So this makes it pretty easy and straightforward. Another thing I want to add was the fact that you can control your documents. So you can add protection areas. So this is something new to the previous release, but I've seen lots of people skip over this or were not aware of this enhancement. But you can add something called an area, right? So if we add an area here, or let's add a space, and then let's add, let's see, here. Right, so this is something new that allows you to go ahead and protect a certain part of your document. So here, I'll just copy and paste this, similar to how a word processor would be, right? And I could go ahead and use this area to collapse, any derivations or excessive information that you wish to hide. And you can also control this area, right? For example, if you had proprietary information, you can go ahead and right-click and protect this area and embed a password within your worksheet. So say you want to pass this along to someone else in the department, but you don't want to reveal all your information here, you can go ahead and protect that. And to open it, you would have to enter the password you set. Something very cool, useful that could come in handy later on. So now let me move on to the natural map notation. Really highlight that. Right. So here are a couple examples of how you can utilize the fact that Mathcad Prime is a whiteboard space. So you literally type exactly how the formulas are taught in school and how you see them in a book, as opposed to having cell references and programming languages that will try to interpret this. Okay, now let me go ahead and jump on to the differences between solving numerically and symbolically. And this was a new enhancement to Mathcad Prime 5. The engine in the background is much quicker and is able to handle large amounts of data than previous versions. So what I am going to demonstrate is the differences between symbolic and numeric formulas. So let me start off by setting up a solve block. Now, a solve block acts like an optimizer, basically. We can go ahead and use this to optimize information and find a certain solution within a specific range. So for this example, let's define a function 2x minus 4y is equal to a. Now most people get confused with this symbol here. So this equal is an evaluator. It's not necessarily being defined. It's different from the colon symbol that we're used to, right? And you can find this within your operators, and then having your evaluations be defined this way. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add another equation, and what I'm going to do within the solve block is basically solve a system of equations. So I'm going to demonstrate how you can solve it using a solve block, which is numerically versus symbolically. So here I have B. And let me define my A value to be something simple. All right, and let's just have a guess value for X and another guess value for Y. Okay, so now I'm going to basically tell this solve block to do the work for me and find X and Y, right? So I can go ahead and go to my functions tab and search through my function right here. And I can go solving, or I can go ahead and just type this out. In this case, I'll just bring this in from your function library that you can utilize, and I'll tell it to look for X and Y, right? And let's have this be a variable. So let's just call this E1, right? So now if we go ahead and evaluate E1, we get our X value to be 3 and our Y value to be -1/2. Right, so this would be an example of you solving X and Y numerically. So now let's take a look at how you can do this same thing, but with a different workflow, symbolically. So now I still have my A and B defined. So what I'm going to do is now insert a matrix. And let's define this to be X and Y. And let's set that equal to my first two system of equations. So I go ahead and insert another matrix here. Just copy this and copy this. Okay. So now let me redefine this variable here. And let me go ahead and clear the previous variables. Okay, so this function here, clear symbols, basically just clears all the previous definitions here. So go ahead and do that. Here it's giving me an error. Let's go ahead and undefine this, For now, let's take a look at this example. And let me evaluate this afterwards. So now I can go ahead and solve this symbolically, if it lets me grab it, by going to our Symbolics icon here and selecting solve. So once we select solve and tell it to solve for X and Y, it'll give us the symbols, right? So you're solving this symbolically. So you're having your A and B displayed. Right, so now if I go ahead and take this out, it will insert the variables here. So it will do it now numerically, right? And you got the same answer as we saw before, 3 and -1/2. So both are very powerful ways to solving, systems equations or any optimization functions. It just depends on what workflow and what you want to display. Right, this will give you clear the symbolics here of A and B. It will give you, a hierarchy or a higher level of, interpretation. Okay. Now, another thing that I see people miss on is the Excel integration capabilities. I just want to give a quick example here of how you can utilize and leverage, large data sets of Excel files into your worksheet. So we'll first start off with the Read Excel feature. Right, when I click on this, it prompts open a window. It lets me browse to an Excel file. So if we go here, we open an Excel file, it will ask us to select, our range. So you can go ahead and specify what range to import. So here we'll just go 1 through 10 and insert that. Right, and like most things in Mathcad, we'll define a variable here, and then we can go ahead and output that. Okay, and you have, like I mentioned, it's like a word processor, so it gives you lots of controls of how to manipulate your data, and it's very intuitive to use. Okay, so that's one way to leverage Excel information. Another thing you can use is you can insert an Excel component, which is one of my favorite features here. And this has been improved upon from previous versions. So we insert an Excel component. We can go ahead and define an input expression to be a data set here. And it will input that into a separate Excel sheet. So if we double click on this space here, it'll launch open a worksheet titled Untitled 3, right? But this is correlated to your Mathcad worksheet. So you're only managing one file in this case, right? The whole point is to manage, to be able to manage large data sets and capture design intent. So if you use the Excel components feature, you can go ahead and leverage that and have an Excel worksheet embedded. Okay, so now for this example, I'm going to demonstrate how you can write to this Excel file here. So let me go ahead and insert an output expression. All right, so we'll say that this is data set 2. But first, let me go ahead and edit this so we see a difference. Let's say this is the sum of these two cells. Right, so now I'm inputting information into this Excel sheet. It propagated within my Mathcad worksheet. And now I have an output function that takes into account this Excel sheet, the changes we made within the Excel components, and it creates a variable out of it. So now let's go ahead and tell it to be defined as A1 through C10, right? So now we display our data2 variable. It'll contain all that additional information. So it'll contain the data set 1, as well as the formula within the Excel here, data set 2. So this is, very useful if, say, you're doing experiments and you have large data set of numbers from a strain gauge or another test piece that you need to capture that and then use that within your following equations. Okay. Now I'm going to touch on some of the plotting capabilities, and this would transition smoothly onto the main Prime 5 enhancements. So the plotting capabilities, we're looking at the plot tab here and the different plots that are available. So we have our 2D plots, our polar plots, contour plots, and 3D plots. So first, let me showcase what was possible before. You can go ahead and define a plot to be just a function, and let's have this be sine of x, and let's add that to our plot here. Okay. And so this gives us, most of the capabilities that we've seen before. We can go ahead and add more functions as well. And we can add a trace here. Let me add a trace to this part and call that g of x. And we can go ahead and have 2 traces within our plots. So this is something we've seen before, and we have the capabilities of manipulating that data, having that stand out a little bit more. And it's kind of like a, like I mentioned before, a word processor, where it gives us control of how we want this to be displayed. Right? So now moving on to some of the 5 enhancements, it's basically PTC's commitment to enhancing the visual presentations of manipulating your plots, having more control of how these are consumed. So the new button within Prime 5 is the chart component, right? So now you have the ability to insert a chart component. And it's going to be the same thing, just with a different interface. Right, so this is the same thing. We're using a 2D plot here, but now it kind of changes a little bit. We have the ability to add inputs. So you have your X and Y expression. So for this example, I'll just define this as a simple sine and cosine plot over here, right? And it basically looks almost the same, but it just gives you a lot more control. We'll see that once you go ahead and open that separate window. So here, just to make it similar to what we've seen in the previous example, I'll go ahead and add another trace. So here, we're going to have to remove this subscript to make it a generic variable. And now we can have our two traces, right? So if we click on the plot this time, it's analogous to when clicking onto the Excel component. We have a new interface that gives us control over our plot, right? So its commitment to being more of a word processor slash calculation engine application. So here we have the ability to manipulate how we want our plot to be viewed. Right? You can go ahead and customize the background, the border, the plot area. You can go ahead and basically customize it the way you want it. So before you didn't have much control over the legends or the chart title. Here you can go ahead and change the font, change the location, right? So here let's just go ahead and add a title to this. And let's just say it's a function of sine of x. We'll just do sine of x here. X versus cosine of x. And let's say that's above. All right, now let's change the legend names. We go to our first trace and set up here. We can change this to be, I believe it was sine of x. And the second trace, do the same thing, and we'll name it cosine of x. Okay, so just like that, we went ahead and renamed these, added a little bit more clarity to our plot. Now, if we click on the plot itself, it's integrated within the properties window on the left. So anything we click on here, it'll prompt us to the properties that we can go ahead and edit, and vice versa. If we go ahead and click on anything on the properties, it will highlight the part on the plot that it's manipulated. Okay, so let's go ahead and just make a few more changes to this. Let's add some grid lines, and let's go ahead and do the same thing for the Y component. Right, you have the ability to add minor tick marks if you want, so that's even more. You can go ahead and do minor grid lines. Just remove this. And another thing I wanted to point out is that if we click on this bottom here, we can go ahead and basically manipulate how this is perceived. So this is a first arrow, just indicating the start and end. We can go ahead and define our range if we wish. We want to have that start at 0. You can change your scaling, your location, right? We're used to seeing it like this. We can manipulate that. So all in all, this is just another cool feature, another add-on to what was first introduced to our plotting capabilities. Now we have the ability to have more control of what the output is, as opposed to what we saw in previous versions and what we were limited to. And now we have a little bit more flexibility and more control. So, yep, this is the meat and bones of the enhancement. Of course, there's some improvements to the engine in the background within the solve blocks and your data integration. But this is really the new button within Prime 5. Okay. And with that being said, I'll go ahead and jump back to the demonstration or the presentation and with some final thoughts. So why would you choose Mathcad over some of other options out there? Sure, MATLAB could handle large sets of information, and you can program a sophisticated code to go ahead and do your calculations for you. But when you want to produce and publish and basically capture your design intent, it's really difficult to see what is going on here, right? If you pass this along to someone else, they're really going to have to audit this and really learn the syntax just to understand what's going on. So Mathcad makes it really easy to standardize your calculations to capture your design intent. It makes it easy to audit and validate what your calculations are. The unit awareness capability is very important as well. Excel is very good at handling large data sets, but When it comes to units, that's where they fail. And all in all, it's meant to eliminate calculations error, right? I've heard this many times, but Mars rover failed its mission in 1990 because of a unit conversion. So stuff like that, you can go ahead and minimize those errors. The last thing I want to point out is, as Mathcad Prime keeps improving and there's more releases, one of the services we offer is converting your data, whether it be from the previous Mathcad versions, such as 15 and older, or converting Excel data and MATLAB data into your Mathcad Prime. Right, so this is a couple examples of some services, features that we do or opportunities that we do, and it just comes to show that if you really want to pass your design intent over, Mathcad is the way to go, and we can provide an easy conversion for you guys. And with that said, I'll open up to any questions.
All right, Eduardo, so it looks like we do have a few questions from the attendees. This question is from Mason Carbassian, and the question is, solve blocks and dual axis plots still don't convert from 15 prime 5 directly, creating lots of rework for large worksheets. Are there any plans to address this in upcoming revisions?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So Mathcad Prime does offer a conversion feature, right, from old sheets to another, but it doesn't really do a good job in capturing all of it. So that's where we go ahead and do the servicing for it, and it really requires manual rework. So we could definitely cut out some times in that sense. And talking to PTC, I heard that they're going to make it easier to transition from previous Mathcad versions to Prime going forward. So they're going to be supporting both softwares until all the features are into Prime, and there's an easy way to go ahead and convert to the latest Prime version. So currently, I would say manual rework and looking for services opportunities when it comes to large sheets. We can do that, but hopefully, PTC comes out with an easier way to do it.
Perfect. Okay, and our next question is, just like you're able to read from an Excel sheet, are you able to write to it as well?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So leveraging Excel sheets are important, and basically Mathcad provides you with large data sets of functions. Right? It's a library that you can go ahead and look for, and one of the functions that you can pull out from is the write function. So you can write to Excel sheets similar to how you would read to it. So if I can spell, you will see write Excel, right? So this is similar to the read Excel feature, but instead you'll be outputting instead of inputting.
Okay, cool. So any last questions? You can write it in the chat.
Yeah, I see a couple other questions that came in here.
Okay.
So Eduardo, Nicholas was asking, do you know when the user will have the ability to adjust margins for the document like you can in Microsoft Word?
To adjust, So I have not heard from PTC if that's on the roadmap. It's a good question. I have not seen it before. I can definitely find that out and see if it's maybe in future releases. I get back to you, Nick.
Yeah, and then we also have other similar questions. It's just like improvement in creating drawing and graphics. So again, that's probably be better answered by PTC themselves. So Eduardo would definitely get in touch with the PTC team and get some input from them to see whether or not it's on their update table and things like that.
What I also heard of is that you can perhaps convert this to a Word document. I haven't seen it before, so it'd be something to look into. But if you can convert it to a Word document, you have the ability to adjust margins. But within Mathcad Prime itself, hopefully it's future releases.
All right. Another question Dean was asking is, how Mathcad is linking to Excel. How can it also use data from an actual database?
No, not that I am aware of. So these are the current data imports and exports that are embedded. If we can go ahead and have a file that's within the Excel integration or text files or within these basic file formats, it might be possible. So far, I've only seen really text files and Excel files, so I'm not sure how exactly it would work with the database.
All right, and I think we have another. This one's from J. Johnny. How can we get the tech support for upgrading Mathcad Prime 4.0 to Mathcad Prime 5.0?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, so it's just he's asking, how can we get the tech support for upgrading Mathcad Prime 4.0 to Mathcad Prime 5.0?
Yeah, so we can help in either upgrading the application itself, updating the license server if needed, the license files, so we can help you on basically making a seamless integration between the two versions and making sure that your sheets are properly updated within the newest release, and if there's any conversion errors, we can go ahead and support you in those cases as well.
Okay. Yeah, Jay, we'll follow up with you as well offline just to make sure that we fully understand what your complete needs are. Hey, Eduardo, if you can just put up the contact information slide again, please. So again, if there's any questions or concerns that you have that we didn't address today, feel free to shoot us a quick email or give us a call, and we'll be more than happy to talk to you and get back to you and make sure that we can help you with what you need.
Perfect. Okay. So we will be posting this video to YouTube later today, so feel free to pass it on to your friends and colleagues. And then please be sure to subscribe to our channel and follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn to get information regarding upcoming webinar dates and topics. And then if you could please just stick around for about 10 to 15 seconds after the webcast ends to fill out a short survey, just letting us know how we did and what you guys liked. We really do appreciate the feedback. So thank you again for attending and have a great day.